Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So for the last couple weeks, I've been doing some fairly challenging mods on the channel, and this week I decided to mix it up a little bit and work on a project that's definitely better for beginners, but also makes a really big impact on the quality of life with using this console. So what we've got here is an SNES Jr. So this is the final version of the Super Nintendo that was released in North America and Japan, maybe in Europe, I'm not sure off the top of my head. And so it's kind of like a cost-reduced version of the SNES. So some of the things that it's missing is the power LED indicator, and it's also missing RF on the back, which honestly really doesn't matter in my opinion. But aside from that, it's a pretty nice console to have. In terms of the internals, it has a one chip, and this is the later attempt by Nintendo to consolidate the CPU and the two PPU chips into a single chip. And this version of the console is known for having like really sharp, high quality RGB, and even composite video, you can notice the difference. That being said, this console does not come with RGB out of the box, but it's fairly easy to re-enable RGB on this console. And so that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to install this open source RGB Bypass mod. This is designed by Borti, and it can be used with a variety of different versions of the Super Nintendo. But today what we're going to do is install it in this Junior here. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to be replacing the original electrolytic capacitors with some new ones. It's not that these have gone bad or anything, it's more just an act of preventative maintenance. All right, so let's take this thing apart and I'll show you guys how to do it. Okay, so taking apart the Junior is really easy. You really just need a Phillips screwdriver and also a game bit screwdriver like this. And once you take off the shell, you can see it's quite reduced in size compared to a standard Super Nintendo motherboard. This is just one example that I have here. And yeah, I've gone ahead and already removed all of the screws and all of that stuff. And so you can see here is the legendary one chip. And so the one chip consolidates the CPU and the two PPU chips into a single chip. And like I said earlier, these are known for having really crisp RGB. The RGB on older versions of the Super Nintendo is a little bit softer when compared to this chip, but the RGB out is not fully sent out to the multi-out on the Junior. This is just kind of an off-topic thing, but I also just wanted to show you again, here is a original Super Nintendo motherboard, and there are three chips. So you've got a CPU, PPU1, and this is a parts board, but normally there's a PPU2 right here. So in my head, I always call these three chip boards, but when you go online, you'll find people that call the older revisions two chip, and I honestly don't know why, because there's no version of the Super Nintendo where there are two chips. It's always three, and the three are always consolidated into one. So it's a little bit confusing to me. I don't know how that terminology came to exist, but I just figured I'd mention it because you'll see this stuff online, and I just want to be clear, there's no such thing as a two chip. There's either three or one. So anyway, now that this thing is free, I'm going to go ahead and remove the heatsink, and once that's done, you'll see it has access to all the capacitors here. So replacing the caps on this board is actually pretty straightforward. There's just 8 of them, and so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take care of that first. Okay, so all of the new capacitors have been installed, and I really love this design because you can see that the polarity for every single cap is in the same direction. So all the negative sides of the caps are facing the front, the positive sides are facing the back, so it's pretty easy to double check your work and make sure you did everything right with this particular board. I also think it's kind of cool that you can see there's a spot here for where an RF modulator is supposed to be installed. So I guess at some point their plans changed and they omitted the RF modulator, but there's still a spot on the board where potentially I guess you could install one. It's kind of neat. All right, so now that the caps are on, let's go ahead and install the SNES RGB Bypass board. So as you can see, it fits right over where the the multi-out is located right over here. And when I did the recapping, I also made a point of putting the leads on these two capacitors right here as flush as possible. So that way, when I take this board and I install it like so, it stays nice and level. I also went ahead and took some Kapton tape and put it on the bottom. And this is just so that the through holes on this side don't accidentally make contact with any of the components over here, because I'm sure that would cause some sort of problem. Okay, so now everything is in place, so I'm just going to go ahead and solder this in really quick. Okay, so the SNES RGB Bypass board has been installed, and now there's really just 4 more wires that we have to connect to it. And so you can see that I've positioned them here. They're inside of each of these little through holes right here. But they're not soldered into place. I just wanted to show you where they're supposed to go. So you tap red over here, green here, blue here, and C-Sync right over here. So you can see that they are all clustered together. It's pretty easy to find them. And then from there, I'm just going to take these wires and connect them to the RGB and C-Sync pads on the RGB Bypass board. All right, so let's go ahead and solder in these final connections right here. Okay, so everything is all finished, and so now you can see that RGB is going to the bypass board and C-Sync also is going to the bypass board. So that is all that we need to do. We are ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this thing and let's see how it looks with RGB. Okay, so we're ready to do a test. I've got the RGB cables plugged into my scaler. The SD to SNES is there for testing purposes, and yeah, let's go ahead and power this thing on and see how it looks. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. So, I mean, as you can hopefully see on screen here, it is extremely sharp, and if you have an older version of the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom, you'll notice that the RGB, it still looks great, it's just a little bit softer compared to the one-chip consoles like this. So let me go ahead and just grab a game for testing. We'll just do Yoshi's Island here. Now, I don't have HD Retrovision cables here at the moment, but I can also tell you this mod is compatible with those as well. So if you're using component, it's gonna look exactly the same as what you're seeing in this video. There's really no difference in terms of quality between RGB and component. It's more just a matter of personal preference. So yeah, it looks exceptional. It sounds great. So yeah, I highly recommend this mod, especially if you're a beginner and you're interested in getting into repairing and modding consoles. This is a pretty easy one to do by comparison. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you like this kind of stuff, then consider subscribing. I have videos like this out every week. And then, of course, if you've got consoles that need to be repaired or modified, you can hit me up directly at oneuprestorations.com. Now, at the moment, I've had the site closed for a little bit, and that's just because I have been really inundated with orders. I've been trying to catch up on them. And it also doesn't help that my day job has me traveling all over Tarnation every week. But yeah, I'm just about done with catching up. And as soon as that's done, I'm gonna reopen and take in some new orders. All right, guys, so thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.